Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my book review on The Pants Project by Clarke, and I gave this book a 5 out of 5. As always, before I go into my full book review, I will do a Booktuber Shout to Lucity. He is one of the first booktubers I came across. I believe he's from the Philippines, and I love his videos because I love his introduction. He's super high energy, and he does a mix of videos from book reading vlogs to reviews and recommendations, and he focuses a lot, in my experience of watching his videos, a lot on romantic books. Before I go into my review, I always appreciate it if you can hit the subscribe button. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up. And if you've read this book yourself or have any comments for me to read for future books, please comment down below. The author Clarke was born in Zambia in Africa, and she was raised in Edinburgh, which I think I'm saying wrong, in Scotland, and Yorkshire in England. And now she currently lives in Edinburgh in Scotland with her partner, her 2 cats, and her two Cocker Spaniels. She was previously working at Scholastic UK, where she worked on some of the biggest non-fiction bestsellers, and she got into writing because she was always fascinated by media coverage on the surrounding of missing children. So one of her first books is called The Lost and the Found, where a girl goes missing at 6 years old, and she is found 13 years later, and she's very disoriented with who she is. Sounds like a pretty interesting book, and I think it's worth adding to your TBR. The Pants Project by Clarke, it was published in 2017. It is definitely a young adult's book, and I would skew it to a bit younger because the protagonist is 11 years old, and it's also in, more specifically, the LGBTQA plus genre as well. As this is a younger young adult's book, the premise is very simple at first. We meet Liv, she's 11 years old and she's entering middle school, and the problem is that her middle school has uniforms, and the actual problem is Liv is actually a boy. Because Liv identifies as a boy at 11 years old, he finds it really unfair that he has to wear a skirt when he feels like he is a boy. So even though it's a middle school and for a young protagonist, it touches on a lot of different themes, and also the struggles of entering a new school, not know your identity, losing friends, making new friends, and not sure how to communicate what you're feeling inside to the outside world. This book has a lot of heart, and even though the protagonist is very young, I really enjoyed the book, and it is told from first person as well, and I really enjoyed the writing style, the conflict that Liv goes through, and all that kind of stuff. There's a big range of characters in the book, the first one being Liv, who is an 11-year-old boy born a girl. There is Jacob, who Liv befriends in class, and he's like this cool popular guy. And then Liv also has 2 moms, and her best friend Maisie, who she went to middle school with from elementary school, but with a bit of a fallout in middle school. And then also there's a bully called Jade as well. This book, The Pants Project, because it is a younger young adult's book, it was a very quick read. I think I read it in like maybe 2 hours. Having said that though, even though it is a younger young adult's book, there are lots of common themes and lessons learned that I thought was really refreshing, and very impressed that you could touch so many topics at such a young age. So common topics that you can probably guess is obviously trans identity, bullying, being raised in the same gender couple, and what's that like, and how that could be hard at school. But in reality, it's not a big effing deal, right? And then also disability, transphobia, homophobia, and also Liv and her best friend Jacob just dealing and growing and learning to accept yourself. So if you have time to read this book, I really recommend it, just because it is an easy read. And like, I don't have any kids, but if I had kids, I would definitely read this book with them, because I think it's really good to expose kids to these type of things really young. Not just because it's a good exposure experience, but because this is very normal experience for a lot of people, and the more you share these stories, the more normalized it is to have abnormal experiences or ways to grow up. So I don't know, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. Things I didn't like. I did give this book a 5 out of 5, and I have been raving quite a bit about it, but you always need to have a constructive eye to criticize something, right? So I guess one thing I wouldn't like about the book is I thought it wrapped up too nicely at the end. But as I said, this is a younger young adult's book, so I think it's fine that it ended that way. But for my personal preference, someone that's in my mid-30s, I just thought it wrapped up a bit too nicely. Many things I like about the book. One of them being, as I said earlier, all different themes that I touched on. I thought that was very great. I love how Liv grows up in a non-nuclear family. I love how there is a fallout with her friend, and there's not really a resolution, which I think is very realistic as well, and a good lesson to teach kids at a young age that you don't, just because someone's your best friend doesn't mean you'll be best friends forever, and that's okay sometimes. I also love how there's no forced love story, because if you watch my reviews, my biggest pet peeve is when there is a forced love story when it's not needed to carry out the plot. So this book does not have a love story, and I love it for that. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 4.10 out of 5, and as you guys know, I think anything over a 4 is going to be a guaranteed good read. So reasons why people didn't like it was they felt the writing was so-so, they felt it was rushed, and felt it was hard to follow the logic of Liv and his character. But I think that's not a very valid feedback, just because Liv, it's told in first person viewpoint, and he's only 11 years old, and he's still trying to figure out who he is and the struggle with going to middle school. So I think it makes sense that the author intended to write it that way. Reviews that were good, I already shared before, was all different themes and lessons learned. And it's just so important to have these stories shared at a younger age, just to normalize that it's okay to feel however you feel at any what age for whoever you want to be. Why I think you should read this book. So I think you should read it because for me personally, it was my first transgender genre book, and it's very eye-opening for me, especially it being such a young protagonist. So definitely worth reading if you haven't read a book in this genre quite yet. Now I'll share how this book made me feel, because as always, I always like to ask people how a book made them feel after reading it, because if you ask me tomorrow, a week, a month, a year, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember exactly what the book was about, but I'll always remember how a book made me feel. So The Pants Project by Clarke, it made me feel very hopeful. It made me feel very hopeful for the younger and future generations, just to have these discussions so openly, to be able to talk freely about who you are as a person. And this is just an all-around really good, feel-good book. If you read this book, The Pants Project by Clarke, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And you probably remember from my last book review that I was going to read The Push by Audrain, but then I kind of got distracted by The Pants Project because I wanted kind of like a more lighter read. But I will read this book next because I have to read it for my book club. Thank you again for watching until the end of this video. I'll appreciate it if you can hit the subscribe button, like, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!